Of all the tools used in construction, the handheld grinder is one of the most potentially dangerous. Never use a grinder with an abrasive wheel that does not match the maximum diameter and RPM of the grinder. Never use a grinding wheel without a guard. Not only does the guard help protect you from flying debris, but it ensures you don't attach a larger grinding wheel than permitted. An over-rotated wheel can explode, sending shrapnel with enough force to maim or kill. Don't use a grinder without a guard. Always match the maximum RPM of the abrasive wheel to the grinder. And wear your personal protective equipment. You're a pro. There's always time to do it right.
Cutting wood on the saw, and accidentally slipped on the floor and lunged forward to the saw, and with my little finger on my left hand, entering the blade area, severing all 4 fingers on a 45-degree angle, maiming them beyond reattachment. 125 stitches later, and probably about 2 weeks in the hospital, I was set on my new course of life here.
A January day of some years ago, and I was cutting a 2x10 for a set of stairs, and there was a lot of ice on the wood, and I was really being sort of careless. I hadn't been careful enough to judge where my hands were as opposed to where the cut was being made. And also, I was also feeling pretty rushed that day. I was trying to get something done in a hurry, and when that happens, generally I tend to overlook things. And the saw began to slip across the ice, and like I said, I'd misjudged my finger, and went right across the leading edge of my middle index finger.
The majority of injuries that I've treated relating to power tools could have easily been prevented, either by simply paying attention to what they were doing, or by the use of proper safety equipment, such as fences on a table saw, or keeping the work area clean.
It's a constant reminder to this day because, number one, the fingernail's a little discolored, the tip of the finger's a little bangled, the fingernail doesn't grow back properly. During the wintertime, during cold temperatures, because the nerve endings have been damaged, I get a constant sensation on the end of it. It's sort of a little aching pain, and so it's a pretty good reminder of what had happened. In the hospital, they sewed up basically there were 3 or 4 pieces of the finger that they sewed together, and I was fortunate enough to get away with not too badly of an injury.
I did something stupid. I was a cocky young 17-year-old who pretty much thought he knew it all at that time, and I found a little scenario where I didn't know it all, to where I shouldn't have been in the position I was. Therefore, this had a good chance of happening, and it did. One little slip was all it took.
That's really the hard and sad truth. Most injuries from power tools only require one little slip or mistake. No group of people understands this reality better, nor does more to promote power tool safety than the members of the PTI, Power Tool Institute.
The Power Tool Institute is a trade association that was formed in 1961 to promote the common business interests of the power tool industry. Our goal is to promote power tool safety from a total industry perspective. Power tools are an everyday part of many, many people's lives, and we feel it's our responsibility to educate as many people as possible. Through the efforts of the Power Tool Institute, a consistent standard list of safety warnings has been developed, and those warnings are packaged with every tool that's sold in the United States.
It's the PTI's member company's commitment to the safe operation of power tools which prompted the production of this power tool safety program. In what follows, you'll get some first-hand tips and hints about keeping your work area safe, electrical safety, developing good personal work habits, and proper tool use and care. By adhering to the advice presented here and exercising common sense, you should be able to minimize the chances of serious injury occurring to you. Because the fact is, when it comes to most power tool accidents, they can be prevented. Perhaps the easiest and most effective thing you can do to assure your safety is to see that your work area is free of potential hazards.
It'd be a good idea when you're thinking of your work area to be sure and keep it well lit and very neat and clean, no clutter around the work site. Clutter can lead to an accident.
Definitely one of the things about a power tool is it creates sparks. And so if you have vapors in the air, which can come from a gas heater or it can come from a gas can that's left open, you get vapors in the area, or some other form, maybe paints and that kind of thing, that spark can cause some type of an explosion in the area. And so therefore, you want to make sure you have good ventilation wherever you're working and nothing like that around.
Your work environment should also be kept dry. Water or moisture is an excellent conductor of electricity. When you operate power tools in wet or damp environments, you increase the chances of an electrical short and possible electrical shock. And of course, you also need to be aware of your surroundings. Surprises are usually fun, but not while you're working.
Keep kids away, keep pets away, but sometimes you can't do that 100%, and so you have to be aware that there are some things going on, and if in fact something happens, you're still in a position to be in control. You have to always make sure that you're in that control position, so that when the, kind of an unexpected, although you suspected it could happen, does happen, that it doesn't make you jump, lurch, move in an unsuspected area.
Sometimes it's the things we cannot see that create some of the greatest threats. That's the way it is with electricity. You must respect the power of electricity.
Power tools are available from various manufacturers with different kinds of cords and plug arrangements on them. A double insulated tool will only have the 2 blade plugs, where a grounded tool will have a 3rd round portion to the plug. And it's always important to make sure that you're mating your plugs to the appropriate outlet and never change the plug to match an outlet. It's a bad idea to remove a grounding lug just so you can get it in an ungrounded plug. That could be dangerous.
With 2-pronged polarized plugs on double insulated tools, one blade is larger and can be plugged in only one way. This keeps the hot and neutral lines in the right alignment. So never alter these prongs so they can fit into a socket. And do not abuse a tool's power cord by using it as a carrying handle or to pull a plug out of a socket. Now, there's rarely a power outlet right where you need it, so you will need to use extension cords. When you do, follow the recommendations for the proper gauge or size of the cord. Using too small a gauge can lead to a loss of voltage, overheating, or a possible electrical fire. Extension cords should be periodically checked for damage to the outer insulating jacket. Also, ensure the plugs are securely attached with the ground wire intact. And when working outdoors, only use extension cords marked with a WA or W.
The electric wants to take the least resistive path to ground, the easiest way it can get to ground. And if you have some kind of a problem, a leakage problem with your tool, and you are holding on to a very good conductor, like a water pipe, a metal water pipe, or a lolly column, a metal beam in the basement or something like that, that's grounded, you then become a very good path to ground through this contact that you've made.
Cordless power tools are gaining in popularity. By the very nature of being cordless, they have eliminated some potential problems, but they also create other concerns. For instance, to avoid possible electrical shock, battery chargers should only be used in dry locations. Care must be taken when handling batteries. Do not short out the battery contacts, which could result in arcing and a possible fire. And because of their contents, batteries should be recycled and not simply put in the trash. Now let's take a look at some good personal habits that can help avoid needless accidents.
Common sense is the single best advice that I could give someone for power tool use. It would seem obvious that you wouldn't use alcohol or even prescription drugs while you're working with a product that cuts wood, for example. Anything that's capable of cutting wood can also cut you, and you'd want to be always in best control of your wits when you're working with power tools. We would recommend that you always pay close attention to what you're doing and always think through the operation and use good common sense when you're working with power tools. That's your safest bet.
It's important that you reduce any possibility of hazard while working with the tool, and one of that is to have clothing that fits fairly tightly to your body. You don't want to have chains hanging out, or if you have long hair, put it up somehow so that it doesn't get caught up in a blade or something like that.
When considering what to wear, you can't forget about the appropriate safety equipment.
With power tools, there's dust and debris of some kind being created all the time. So it's absolutely mandatory at all times with power tools to be wearing your eye protection. And that goes for anybody in your immediate vicinity that could be struck by an object or could have a problem.
Now, when working with grinders or other tools that generate heat or cause the workpiece to heat up, you should always wear protective gloves. If the job generates loud noise, use ear protection. Hearing loss worsens over time. Often, you don't even notice it until there's some permanent damage. And often overlooked, but very important, are dust masks. Always wear a mask when doing operations that fill the air with dust, like sanding. Now, before plugging in a power tool, make sure the lock-on switch is in the off position. Also, before starting up, remove blade wrenches and chuck keys. If you leave a wrench or a key stuck in your power tool and then start it up, you most likely will send that piece of metal flying like a missile. Okay, let's turn the attention to proper tool use and care.
It's a good safety practice to have a mental checklist and go through it every time you pick a power tool up to use it. It's a good idea not only to check and make sure that the power tool cord's not frayed and that the tool itself is clean and sharp and in good condition, but to make sure that all guards work properly and snap to very cleanly.
Of course, never override the safety guards or try to adapt guards and accessories from another power tool. And be sure your workpiece is secure.
It's very important while you're doing an operation on material, drilling, sawing, whatever, that the material is secured properly. First of all, it'll help you do a much more accurate job in what you're trying to accomplish. But most importantly, by having the material secured, any accidental movement of the material that could cause injury would not result. So you want to keep that thing secured and solid.
Manufacturers' clamps might not always work with irregularly shaped pieces. When you find yourself in that situation, a standard C-clamp can be used.
It's very important when you're operating a tool that you're balanced and steady. You don't want to be overreaching up on a ladder, reaching out, trying to get that final screw in or make that final cut. It's all wrong. If something goes wrong, you get a kickback or the drill twists funny, you could fall and hurt yourself. So you want yourself steady when you're operating the tool. And one of the best ways to control a tool is by having two-hand operation. One hand in some cases works fine, but whenever you can have two hands, that's what you want to do. Especially for circular saws, you always want two-hand operation.
Also, match the tool to the job. Use only accessories recommended in the owner's manual for that tool. Whenever you use a tool for a purpose for which it was not designed, you run the risk of damaging your power tool investment. Worse yet, you create situations where kickback loss of control can cause injury. And you also risk injury from loss of control when the cutting surfaces of the tool are dull.
You have to keep your drill bits, saw blades sharp, and let the tool do the work for you. Taking a dull saw blade and forcing it through a piece of wood not only gives a very bad cut, it's also dangerous because you're overexerting on the tool. You can lose control, lose balance as you're forcing the tool to do something it was never designed to do.
Anytime you want to do any kind of change to the tool, in other words, changing a saw blade or a drill bit or adding an accessory, the first thing you want to do is unplug that tool so you don't have any accidental operation. Then go in, make your changes, and then you're ready to go, plug the tool in.
When you're finished working, store your tools properly. They should be put back clean and dry and placed out of the reach of children. Be sure your power tools are properly maintained by checking the manual to determine what user maintenance is required.
Each manufacturer has their own set of recommendations for proper maintenance to tools. Some tools are permanently lubricated and require less maintenance than other tools, but it's always necessary to make sure that you maintain the proper operation of the guards. If light lubrication is necessary to make sure that the guarding is working swiftly and properly, that's your responsibility.
And what should you do if your power tool needs service?
It's always recommended that if service is needed on a product, to be taken to someone that's qualified so that all the parts can be assured to be in original working condition and providing you with the safety, again, that was designed into the product.
Finally, power tool manufacturers invest considerable resources developing the manuals that are packaged with every power tool. The time you spend reading the manual may very well be the best investment you can make to ensure your safety.
The single most important point to make to new users and youngsters and even to practiced users of power tools to assure safety is to read the owner's manual. Every manufacturer has made sure to include the proper cautionary statements and the proper advice and the proper operating instructions for their own product. So in the owner's manual, you'll find that information that's most vital to you for the safe operation of the power tool. So the single most important thing is to not only read the owner's manual, but to heed every statement that's in it.
Well, that's it for this presentation on power tool safety. At first, it may take a little extra thought and effort to ensure you're using your power tools safely. But after a bit of practice, these safety hints and tips will become habit and part of your normal work routine. Remember, if you maintain a safe work area, respect electricity, develop safe work habits, properly use and care for your tools, and read the manuals, you'll minimize the chances of accidents occurring. You'll also prove what we've been saying throughout this program. Most injuries from power tools can be prevented.
If I could say something to any young shop student or anyone anywhere, just respect that equipment for what it is and be careful. You can never be too careful. Never.